essentially this wood is plain wood. It's not painted or anything. And so I'm not sure what type of wood it is, but essentially it's a whitish color. And I know in this class we've talked about different issues in society, different issues of race, and so on. And so what we're going to embark on now is with these mannequins. I'll give one to each of you, and the idea is to paint them, but trying to paint them with your own sort of, what is your skin color recipe? Like, what different colors of paints would mix together, and so you can have a mannequin that's more customized specifically to you. So, in this country, there's certainly often presented as a dominant skin color, or there's a dominant culture. So the exercise today is to be more specific to ourselves. Now, I have some colors here, and I just wanted to show a little bit about using the colors, a little bit about mixing the colors, and a little bit about techniques and approaches to this project. So now, the basic paints here are from a set I got. It's literally called washable multicultural paints. That there's efforts by, in different ways and different levels of society, to have paints, materials, images that are more appropriate to the diversity in this country. And when I first started doing it, I looked sort of, I have black and I have white here, but those are separate. They didn't come in this particular paint set. So, I looked at this one that's a peach color, and so with the top you can just open it up and squirt out a little. And there's a couple of ways of approaching this. One is to just take some of the paint. Actually, I'm just going to, I have my mannequin here that I just demonstrate on. And you can start painting it right on, like so. But another thing I've found helpful, so I'm sort of looking at that color and looking at my skin, is you can sometimes take a little bit of the paint and literally just, dab it on. And I can see right there that, my skin has other elements in it. So the idea here is sort of coming up with a recipe, like, what is your skin color recipe? And so I can look at that and say, well, I think that I'm a little darker than just that plain peach. So I sort of go like this to get some of that paint off my brush. And then just, I took a look at one. This is the mahogany color. And if you haven't done a lot of mixing with paint, whenever you introduce the color that's much lighter or much darker, it can have a greater effect. So I'm just going to maybe take a little of this, and so I'm sort of just mixing it together right here. And I can just dab a little more on my skin, and obviously the paint is a little shiny and slippery, but that's, compared to where I started off, I feel like it's blending more. So the idea here would be just to get a few colors, to experiment with it. That's starting to mix a it dries, it looks a little different. So then once you sort of have a mixture that's working well, then you can just come to your Manikan and start painting it. Now I've found that if you try to, say you paint, you go, oh well, the base color of the Manikan's coming through, and you just try to glob a lot of it on, it can get sort of blotchy. So sometimes I've found an effective approach is to, put down a layer and then head to another area and paint there, and then with that initial area, once it, this dries pretty quickly. So if you put on a thin layer and it dries pretty quickly, then you can come back to that area and start building up the layers so you can hopefully get a more solid color of what you're after. So you can, as I mentioned, it depends sort of how familiar you are with paint. You can also, if you want, you can take the end of the brush, and put some paint over there, go like that and mix it up. I find that, I sort of like using just the brush end and sort of mix things together and head towards the colors you want. Okay. So the goal now, what to work forward now, is to come up, get a plate for the paint, to get a Manikan, and moving forward, these are yours. I found when we did this last class, some people, when they painted, would left them here to dry and pick them up, or you can take them with you. There's some brushes here. This is kind of a complete brush set. There's some smaller ones that have sort of a pointed tip like that. There's some in here that have more of a flat end. And this is what an old honey roasted peanut jar that I just reused as my paintbrush. But the goal here is to just take some time and maybe, I know I've introduced some ideas. There's some other thoughts I have about this process and what it might mean. But I strongly encourage you to, maybe if you want to have your art book open, and if there's any thoughts or feelings or ideas that come up for you while doing this project. So the idea is just to relax a little bit. It's learning about painting, it's learning about mixing colors. Again, we're really experimenting here with different tools. But why don't we get going?